Welcome to the Simple Minds podcast, where we look to empower and encourage real conversations amongst men everywhere by unpacking topics on self-growth, philosophy, and business. Hello!
G'day.
Hi. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Simple Minds podcast. My name is Justin Bourne, and today I am your host. Self-awareness is considered a superpower among some of the greatest of all times, but we struggle to be aware of ourselves. And generally the first place to start with that is being honest with ourselves. So today we are going to discuss how can we be more honest with ourselves and why don't we like the truth. It's going to be a bit of a ripper. I'm accompanied by my fellow co-hosts. They're all here today. They don't need an intro, so just say g'day.
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 G'day. G'day.
Hi.
Hello. Mate.
I said hello at the same time you said hi.
Sup. So I'm going to get straight into the drop. Today I have brought a drink. Such great English. No, this drink was recommended by a fellow listener of ours. He reached out and after listening to a few episodes and sent through his recommendations. Yeah, so his name is Simon Perry. So anyone listening out there, feel free to send through your recommendations. Even send us a brew if you like for us to try.
We will drink anything.
We will.
We've got to have somebody
We
actually have.
We have to have somebody test it first in case it's poison.
That's what we've got Josh for.
So the easiest way, please send us a DM on the gram at Simple Minds Podcast and on
These
the gram.
millennials, Mike.
Yeah, please. So Simon recommended.
Thanks, Simon.
Yeah, thanks, Simon.
Say it.
He recommended, I don't know how to say this, a Glacia Anna Perina Shiraz Cabernet. However, I got a sister drink because I didn't have the exact recommendation.
So this is not the drink he recommended.
This is the same
Sorry,
same
Simon.
brand. It's the same. It's the same kind of batch.
Are you trying to get him to send us the other one?
This just happens. Yeah, so Simon can send us the actual one.
Wait till he says Simon says.
Drink this red wine.
So this is a Shiraz Cabernet Sauvignon. When I went to go to the checkout to purchase this at our local liquor barons, actually the owner said this is
You forgot your wallet.
Yeah. He said it was his favourite brew in the whole shop. And he went to a wine tasting a few months ago for this and said he had to have it in his store. So this is the same shop that sold me some dud beers, so who knows if it's legit. But
It's the same shop that I got the root beer from.
yeah,
It was a cork one, right?
yeah, it was corked.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at $54 a bottle, it should be a pretty good
Here we
drop.
go.
Oh,
Well,
so-
shit, mine ain't $54 a bottle.
Somebody's doing well.
Yeah, I know. Just for you guys. It's a podcast. You got to live up to these recommendations. So,
$4 a bottle. We didn't even decant it. We just.
I know, right?
Shit.
Fucking on the edge.
Cheers.
Cheers, lads.
Salute. It looks very grapey.
Can we invest in 2 more glasses?
Not the grapey joke again.
I'm not buying any more glasses of this podcast. You guys are rebels.
Yeah, they don't last in this office,
You'll stop breaking them.
in this studio.
Oh, and it's a cheese board.
Indeed. You can get the cheese board for your next episode. That won't cost $55.
No, IGA.
A couple of craft slices.
The single one.
Craft singles.
That's not bad. I don't mind it. I think it would have been better decanted.
Decanted?
Yeah.
Next
without
time. Next time.
When
When
we
we try
get
the
the real
actual
one.
recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, we're decanting wines in the office on Fridays in my office.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
teaching the young kids how to use a decanter.
Are you doing the
Young Matty Mandich picks up the decanter, sees a bit of dust in the middle of it, starts blowing into it. I said, dude, seriously, don't ever do that when you're trying to impress your women friends around there. Blowing into a decanter, and that's cleaning it out, you idiot.
So on that, let's get into it. So,
Good story.
yeah, to be honest with you, that's a shit story.
What do you mean? Do you want someone blowing into your decanter? That's what these young kids are doing.
Anyway, moving on. So, the topic of this episode is being honest with ourselves. So, you know, we we talk about wanting to be the best versions of ourselves. And Matt made an interesting observation as we were preparing for our episodes that a lot of our topics individually kind of have a running theme. And my last topic that I brought was about achieving greatness. And really, the only way to achieve any greatness is to learn to be honest with ourselves, with what we really want and who we are. So, you know, I don't know why we always make it so hard for ourselves. It seems we can easily turn a blind eye to, you know, the areas of our life that we have problems, where we are suffering, and we just simply don't want to tackle these things head on. We literally sit in pain. We sit in these situations and we just don't want to tackle them head on. You know, even though, you know, it's uncomfortable in that situation, we still prefer to lie to ourselves than to move forward. So I know personally I've struggled with this in certain areas of my life, and it's funny how you kind of push some components of your life to a corner, and you don't want to tackle them. So you're like, oh, I'll deal with that later. And it's not until, you know, something explodes on us or slaps us in the face that we finally make a decision to do something. And it's like, why do we need to wait for the universe to literally punch us in the face before we can genuinely be honest with ourselves? And I think it's a real, you know, interesting thing to tackle, because if you're going to start anywhere, this is where you've got to start. So I want to go straight into it and open it up to the floor. I'm going to start with Conrad. I want to start with you. Not putting you on, being honest, but we understand that self-love is the core of a lot of what we talk about. But I understand outside of self-love, and through a lot of the conversations we've had in the past, that one of the other biggest roadblocks for people, particularly that you coach and have been around, is not being able to be honest with themselves. So why do you think we struggle? And from your experience with a lot of these individuals that you've worked with in the past, why don't we want to know the truth?
I think this day and age, simply we are lacking a massive dose of resilience. And so when you talk about not being able to deal with the truth, the lacking of resilience in your DNA, in your makeup, makes it almost impossible to be honest with yourself, almost to the point where it's delusional. And I'm seeing that more and more often these days. Now, I mean, I'm not going to just bucket it down into the millennials, but around. I mean, I've seen a lot of clients as well. So, you know, clients through my business, as well as young kids I've coached. There are a lot of people living delusional lives because they can't deal with the truth.
In your view, what would you consider an example of delusional?
Oh man, you know, I think the greatest delusion we're dealing with at the moment is, you know, how Australians have this obsession with buying a home, and that puts you in a great position financially. You know, I've been in the finance game now for nearly 30 years, and I'm yet to see anybody really achieve any real greatness in residential investment property. It's delusional, and the reason why they do it is because they're sold to that they need a house, but no one tells you to go and take a. No one that understands money and wants to be honest with themselves will tell you to go out and take a mortgage for 85, 90, 95% on a mortgage and expect you to get ahead. You just don't.
And I think a lot of the time it's people aren't being challenged by anybody, so they just get away with it. I think a lot of, and there's no education as well in regards to...
I agree with you, Mike. I mean, and you know, and I know. There's a drum roll.
Can you take the...
No, I do agree with you. But I honestly...
Drink on that.
I do believe that the other side of this is that we are walking around with these damn phones that, you know, I still get phone calls at 9 o'clock at night from people asking me what are the best term deposit rates out there. I said, well, use that damn phone in your fucking hands and ask Google. You know, we don't give ourselves the opportunity or the power to ask better questions of ourselves. And to use our technology better. So we can talk about lack of education, but we're living in the most freedom of knowledge times of our life. And I mean, I suppose I'm digressing a little bit, but it's still the biggest issue I deal with on a day-to-day basis, people telling them a lie. Because if they want to get financially free, don't take a damn mortgage on.
Yeah, but that's the same with just honesty in general, or people lying or not telling the truth, is that there's nobody challenging them. Then they get away with it. You know,
What's that line out of that movie? You can't handle the truth. You remember that one?
Oh, what is that?
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire.
No, it's A Few Good Men.
It's an army movie.
It's A Few Good Men where the corporal's on the stand.
Oh, in the Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson. Yeah.
My bad.
And that's the thing. A lot of people can't handle it. So it's really up to the people surrounding people. If they can see somebody's lying, and it is obvious some of the time, people have got to challenge.
That's Show Me the Money. Sorry. Jerry Maguire.
We're mixing up our Tom Cruise movies.
No, but it comes down to understanding what it is you're trying to achieve, right? In any given form. So I talked about finance, whether it be sport, whether it be business, whether it be your personal relationships. What is it that you really, really want? You know, if you really want something, then what do you need to do to get there? And are you prepared for that?
And that's where people maybe aren't honest in what they really want. They've not delved deep enough to really work out what it is they're trying to get to.
Lack of commitment.
So then it's easy just to fall into the trap of buying a house or getting married or whatever.
Following somebody else's bullshit,
of course,
not being intrinsically happy with it, and then getting to the end of their lives and thinking, well, what the fuck was that all about?
And it's scary to look at the truth sometimes, obviously, and that's what Justin's saying. It's the darker side of facing what's inside you and what you're doing,
exactly right.
What you're doing with your life.
And when you said that scary, I didn't understand because, again, I didn't understand the bullshit that fear is, so I understand where you're coming from with what people deal with.
Yeah.
I agree with Michael twice.
Conrad is not a person, remember.
Holy shit. It's easier to blame others if you fail at something that you want to achieve because you're not honest with yourself. So it's easier to look externally at others and put the blame on others rather than be honest with yourself and actually own your own shit. So that's my probably 2 cents worth.
And others sort of would be grouped into people, but also then like society, economies collectively. Like a lot of, how many business people are running the excuse, the economy sucks, so I can't do anything right now.
Been doing that since
20.
2020.
So it's not just like the blame on people, it's blame on just any external factor that doesn't allow them to take, they're using as an excuse to not take full responsibility.
As soon as I hear blame at the moment, though, I can't wait to think we should give myself some time and figure out where the opportunity is, because those people are waving the white flag. Those people are giving you an indication that they are waving the white flag and they're tapping out. So you go the opposite direction with they're at. Well, what needs to be done to see what they're not seeing?
Yeah. Justin, personally speaking, obviously topics do come from a personal place a lot of the time when you bring up that sort of thing. Is there what's been happening in the last couple of months that you've seen in yourself that is something you've not been telling yourself correctly or honestly?
Oh, look, I think it's both personally and in my proximity of people around me. I see it all too common as well. And generally, I think through this podcast and through some of the stuff that we've been exposed to the last couple of years, I've grown individually, and I think it's not putting yourself on a pedestal per se, but you see situations from a different lens once you go through a bit of your own journey. And so you see people, loved ones and people close to you who are just delusional in a lot of areas of their life. And you've got to, I think, work on yourself to be able to be, it has to start with you. It's kind of like that you can't help anyone who doesn't want to be helped. So you can observe with someone and they will just put up the walls and be like they're willing to suffer out of not wanting to listen to any outside sources and go through.
And you can't help anybody without going through it yourself as well, though. In the past, so whenever it was, you still had to go through the process because you can't dictate to somebody that you must be honest, you must be this, without actually felt it yourself, I suppose, because then you don't have the experience.
Well, it's not necessarily dictating.
Not dictating, but trying to educate or trying to awaken their vision of what their life is. So,
but it's honestly not implied, though, Mike. When you're doing most things, I mean, when we talk about delusional,
I think everybody lies, though. Everybody does.
Yeah, I get that. The funny thing was when your topic first came up, Justin, the first thing I got taken back to, and I tried to find it to watch last night for a sense of aloofness.
Jerry Maguire.
Top Gun.
Oh, fuck.
No, the fucking hell, the invention of lying. The Invention of Lying with Ricky Gervais. I don't know whether any of you guys have watched that movie, and
No.
it's actually one I encourage you guys to watch because it's a funny one, but it's a funny take back and look at how a series of moments unfold from that first lie you tell.
The complexity of it all.
And so, I watched it on a plane coming back from somewhere, which posed me then to have a conversation with my brother, because I used to share a room with my brother back in the olden days. He used to fart on his head as well. But when you live intimately with that person, you get to know different things, right? And when you look at the way this movie unfolded by that lie that was told, and he didn't know how to get out of that, and the wave that created, I think that took me on another tangent. But simply goes back to think what truth are you telling yourself versus what lie are you telling yourself.
Yeah, I think and it comes back to, Travis brought this up in a few episodes around language and what language we use with our self-talk and those type of things as well. But it's generally not until you look back and reflect, you're like, how was I so delusional in that situation? And I think, part of the reflection tool helps you to be in the present. So there's been a few situations where I've personally been in, say, a couple meetings, and I think we talked about this in one of the episodes as well. I think it was the letter back to ourselves was actually what we were telling ourselves in that moment. So that's almost a tool to be honest with yourself, I feel like, because, like as you just said, you might be going, through yourself, and so, or everything's a reflection, and the irony is that it's so much easier to see someone else's, say, faults or situations or whatever, even if they're identical to yours. It's so much more easier to call someone else out on something than yourself. And there's been quite a few of those situations that have shown up for me personally, combination with reflection, which is what I talk about when, particularly in business, you might have a lack of sales or an implosion or something happens, and then you take action when you should have taken action earlier, and it was because you weren't honest and didn't want to look at and be honest with yourself, because it either exposes you, it makes you feel less worthy, it bruises your ego, it makes you feel stupid, that you just completely ignore it almost. It's like we have these we literally turned a blind eye to these things. So,
two things can I challenge you on,
yeah,
or even just present with you. We talk about delusional, and when I was going through my note taking, the fine line for me between someone that's delusional and the other side of that to me is aspirational, and again, because both are wanting something, but one is different to the other. Do you guys want to give a guess as to what I found the difference to be?
Purpose.
Delusional. Well, I think you can both have the same purpose. Delusional versus aspirational.
Action.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always the answer.
Hang on, sorry.
Execute.
Jerry Maguire.
No, but
And limitations as well. Knowing yourself and knowing what. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about he wanted to be an NBA star, but he was honest enough with himself to know that he was a 5'3" midget who could never actually achieve that. So he could have lied to himself and tried out for the NBA draft, but I suspect it wouldn't have got very far. So,
but if you put two people in a room and you're talking to two people, okay, and one you would label delusional, the other one you would label aspirational. When I look at these two people, and we're talking about anyone in my office or anyone that I've coached, and I put two people side by side with those two tags, the single thing that I would say that separates them would be action. Action towards their purpose, towards what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, but see, where purpose comes in for me is I think a lot of people will, it's human nature to still be taking some action, but I think it's more fear of success which stops that honesty piece. I think human nature is to walk around in a forest, and if there's 10k from point A to point B, they'll do 250 k's walking around in circles, waiting for a magic bullet to take them through to the end. And that magic bullet then means, well, they didn't do it. So let's say they were a guitarist. Someone saw them in a country pub somewhere, and then all of a sudden threw them into the limelight, and it happened to them. That wasn't them sort of gradually taking steps out of the community to be different. And I think there's a fear of success that stops people from just taking the deliberate action. I think I've used, I'm a trained accountant. I used to
you lie all the time then. I know they're lawyers.
But I used to cut through numbers for Coca-Cola. Yet sometimes in my small business, I have not done certain numbers, and when I haven't, it's like, that's because I didn't want to know the goddamn answer. So
no, you knew the answer.
Yeah, I knew the answer.
To prove the truth.
I just didn't want, I didn't want to prove it, and that's what this is. And sometimes, like, I do feel that comes back.
That's
to that
delusional,
purpose,
then, right?
that
Because you know
purpose
the
piece.
answer. That's delusional.
That is.
So you didn't take action.
Is the fear of failure greater than the fear of success?
No.
Well, Lance
I
Armstrong
don't
will tell you that
believe
fear of
so.
success is the biggest hindrance, and okay, yes, Michael, we can talk about Lance Armstrong in a myriad of different ways.
My
but,
mind went to Neil Armstrong for a second. Sorry.
Oh, we can come back to that topic. Don't worry. But fear of success to me, and what I've read on it, is a bigger inhibitor to movement than fear of failure.
Well, that's what we talked about last week, which is that, it's funny, you're willing to go through that, say, financial suffering rather than like being uncomfortable to go through onto the other side. Like, you're willing for, to not face the truth and deal with stuff.
Yeah, because you want people to show pity towards you, mate.
Mm.
That's what that happened.
You're surrounded by society telling you what you need to be doing as well. Like with especially the mortgage side of things. I mean, over the last 60 years, since the 50s, the perfect, the perfect home. It's like it's what's been drilled into us. It's probably in our DNA now. That sort of thing. So it's a hard thing to break.
It is in the Australian psyche, that's for sure. Not necessarily globally. It's not. I mean, we do buck the trends significantly on that. In fact, I believe it's almost the opposite number of owner-occupied homes in Germany and in the Scandinavian countries.
So, Matt, you shared one. Finances, I think, is a common one where we like to shy away, particularly in business. And we're talking about finances. I think all of us have gone through certain elements of this, for a while. Mike, you recently went through with your business. Take us through a little bit of that, an example with the recent change with bringing on, because that would have had to be a process of being honest with yourself about bringing on an employee, because we've got finances, but I think even from a business aspect, did you need to go through a process there?
Describe what the business went through firstly.
Well, I've been I suppose what you traditionally call a freelancer for a long time, like for 15 years working for myself. I have had part-time guys on board over the last few years, which has been fine. But it's a very slow process. I've brought somebody else on in the business who were looking at partnering up or bringing him sort of into the business as a stakeholder in the business, which is exciting for the business from a growth perspective. But it's been a long process. Like it wasn't a quick decision. It was a really slow, personal process that Victor that I brought on board. I mean, I've been meeting up with him for about 2.5 years, just talking over a burger about this possibility. He was working full time for another company, so I planted the seed there. So I suppose I knew. And actually, where we all met, or a few of us met at the Entourage, I mean, that was when I went through a stage of, and again, being told by somebody, you've got to grow, like, you've got to scale. So you join this thing, and it's
that's what that program was.
Of course, it is.
Scalable
and saleable.
You did not have to, exactly, you didn't have to grow.
But that's like, but as somebody that hadn't gone through a massive self-development process at that stage, you get sucked into that.
Yeah, I think it's a good example. It's like the self-help thing. There's a big trend.
Yeah, but I saw that quite quickly. That actually during it, like probably within the first quarter of the year of doing the Entourage, I thought, I don't want to grow big. I want to keep what I've got and just iterate and change. And from that, I did change. Like I had a massive shift in what we focused on from graphic design into digital and web, but it's been a really slow transition. So I'm not one to do big jumps into change. I take things very easily, and numbers thing you're talking about, I've lied to myself for a long time. I mean, I've been in business 15 years. But this thing is, it's only.
I think we've all been through it.
I don't think there's. I mean, we're in a confessional booth here, right?
but the last two or 3 years, I've really focused on looking at the numbers and with Victor on board, and just that outlook on and being honest with yourself with the numbers just creates.
How's it changed
growth.
with having a staff member now? With being honest,
As I said,
with
I have
yourself?
had staff members before, but having a partner in the business
or partner, should I say.
it's changed completely. I mean, there's accountability, which is massive. There's skill level. I mean, we've been able to take on bigger projects. And just somebody to bounce stuff off. Victor's a beautiful guy, it's just a really amazing setup. And we've talked, about the Jason Fried who doesn't look at traditional business methods in his...
Oh, he does.
He doesn't.
Yeah.
He
Oh.
doesn't. He doesn't. His vision is
Have
there.
you shared that with Mike?
His vision is there, what you said. But from that podcast, what I got from it, he's not traditional in that sense, okay?
But just okay, well, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
That's a
But
whole
what
other
I'm
topic.
saying is, and maybe you don't need to be stuck in. Yes, numbers are very important. A good accountant is very important. There's some basic elements of business, but you don't have to be exactly like the scale, the entrepreneur. You've not got to go down that path. You can just take it.
Yeah. How do we do like the self work though to not be say influenced? Because like I think business and all areas of life we get heavily influenced by others.
Break down boundaries of what you've been told your whole life and
Yeah.
question them. That's
Well,
it.
you got to understand what you're wanting to be and become. I mean, Mike, it's interesting that you talk about the hiring of Victor in the third person in the business that's good for the business. I mean, the business is you. All right, so that's, to me, it was good for you. Question is, why was it good for you?
Why was the business good for me?
No, why was hiring Victor good for you? Because you
Companionship.
Yeah, hey, and it is what, because I think sometimes, and this is the truth thing, sometimes we can hide behind these structures and these myriads and, all these things we put around
exactly.
ourselves.
I didn't bring Victor on to scale to this size.
No,
It was a companionship for the
but
business.
nor was he good for the business, he was good for you.
Yeah, of course. Definitely, yeah. Yep.
Like Frodo and Sam.
Yeah, and I think that's
I've got hairy feet.
Like the dog.
that could be the challenge when we've got big decisions is try to really be honest with what is the underlying, like, what are we really wanting out of it? Because we can tell bullshit stories around justification because we're so good as humans of coming up with all sorts of stories to justify anything. And I think...
anything and everything we can justify.
Oh, 100%. And it's like, how do you cut through sometimes that bullshit? And like I said, reflection's been a big one of just looking back at all of those situations. You're like, how could you not see it? So with that as well, like we're in a room here where we have pretty candid. How do we feel like, how important is proximity for both the positive and the negative? And I guess a common one is, I'll probably touch more on the negative is, and coming back to Mike of the situations of why I brought this up, is that it's very common that you see groups of people actually put a bubble or essentially bubble wrap around other individuals that they love, in the fact of they think they're keeping them safe and comfortable. They're actually doing them more harm because they're not allowing them to be honest with themselves. So a common one is kind of like, someone blame or whatever reason, and then a friend of theirs or a loved one goes, no, it's okay, you're all right, like, don't worry, which is not allowing them to see the actual truth of what's going on. So how is proximity a massive influence?
Well,
And
if you go to any old pub on a Friday night and you watch a bunch of guys, bunch of girls, probably made some good money that week, spend at least what they made that week, and stand around like whinging that they don't have enough money to do anything. So that proximity sucks. And if that's your proximity, then you're going to need to find some other people. Because
If you want something different.
if you want something different,
If
but
you're telling someone a
if
different
you're
story.
okay with sitting around whinging that you've never got enough, but you're making great money, but you're just drinking it up everywhere. That's just one example, but you could be blowing it on anything. But let's just say that's what you're doing. Then clearly you've surrounded by the wrong group, and you need to make a change if that's what you're looking for. But people are everywhere telling themselves a story, and the advice someone would be giving them, or you listening, is actually just to protect their own decisions half the time. Be careful about taking advice, because do they really mean that for you and your progression, or is it just around them justifying what they've done in their life?
And to be honest,
that's a great point.
everybody is telling stories all the time. There's not a single human on the planet that is not doing that. So
we're all on the hero's journey, Mike.
Yeah, but that comes back to language. You can tell two sides of a story, an empowering story or a disempowering story for ourselves, and or we can be telling a complete lie of a story. And I think, Matt, you pointed out a good one is like sometimes not everyone has your interest at mind. And if they really, someone who says they love you might actually be holding you back and telling you their own bullshit lies so that they can feel comfortable, because they don't want you to take a step. And I think that's a hugely common one. I mean, that's like Gary Vee talks about, don't listen to your parents a lot of the time.
Your family's going to give you some of the worst advice at times. I heard a story the other day about a guy who's like...
Great intention, but maybe bad advice.
Went and bought a bunch of residential apartments, so just excluded... Just went and made a big investment, had plans to make it grow money. Got on the phone, called his mum, and his mum said, "Oh, but what are you going to do at 2 a.m. when they call you with a leaky tap?"
Not even a congrats.
Because that happens.
That's just the mindset. It was like, it's not that his mum didn't love him. It was just that all that she could think or see was worry, what if something went wrong, and just deliver that. So you have to be strong enough to move past that from your parents or your spouse or whoever is, giving you that advice, or have the strength to just be able to let it brush past you at some point, or find some other people to talk to about it to help you get the strength.
But how do you take the steps to do that? How do you know if you're in that situation?
Well, I think you're going to know. Is my personal. I think if you're searching for something and you find you're thinking to yourself, and we've known people. There's been a couple of people pop up recently, even in the Brekkie Club, and they're like, "No, I'm looking to find more people that I can have different conversations with." So I think I knew when I was looking, and I think most people will know that if they're seeking change, they'll know that they need to find some other people in their proximity.
You've got to be, again, the issue is being honest with yourself. Are the people giving you enough information or challenging you to get better towards where it is you want to get to? That's what you've got to understand. Otherwise, what is your context on that?
The biggest thing for me is that everyone is always telling stories, but whether you believe them or not, whether you're believing the stories you tell yourself is where the issue comes from. If you're in a proximity, like you were saying, where people are telling stories about having no money because they've spent it all on these things, and that group collectively helps you and encourages you to believe that internal dialogue, then you kind of go in a negative place. If you're in a group like we are, like the 7 a.m. Breakfast Club, where if you come and say, "Oh, hey, I've got no money this week," we're not going to be like, "Oh, that's all right, Jacob," kind of pat you on the back. Like, what the fuck, mate? Like, work harder, hustle, spend a bit less on this. They'll call you out in your bullshit. And that's the sort of proximity you need to be around. For me at the gym, we get plenty of members that say, "I'm a bit sore this week," or "I didn't come because I was a bit busy with work," or whatever. And it's kind of part of my job to understand and empathize with their situation and go, "Yeah, that's cool." But also to kind of call them on their story a little bit and go, "Hey, that seems
give me
to
20.
Yeah, that seems to be happening a lot for you," or you're constantly choosing weights that are maybe below where you should be, and kind of
You've been looking at my training sessions too much.
yeah. To understand people better than they potentially understand themselves, or at least be that third party objective observer that can call you out in that story. And that's where proximity can be really powerful, when you're around people that know you well enough to understand the story you're telling and to call you out on it and go, "No, you're better than that."
You can't drop any lower than free weights, mate.
So I guess,
I love that Vaynerchuk quote.
We'll get there. So far it seems, proximity is key and can affect you in both ways. I want to do full circle back to Conrad. Coming back to
Hot seat.
Yeah. Hot seat. No, it's the opposite. What do you tell people, or what would you encourage or tell someone who needs to hear the truth, or how would you enable someone to do the prep work to allow them to be more honest with themselves? What would you tell people?
I think the key to hearing the truth is being open to it in the first place. So that level of vulnerability is imperative, and obviously that goes with it with a dose of resilience. They're the two biggest things. But there's been a few times in my life where I've had to get off my delusional train And unfortunately, I did not have a lot of people around me to help me do that. I kept on smacking into walls and falling onto floors, and that's what the universe, the life taught me a lot of life lessons. I caught up with someone yesterday who's a capital raiser, and he goes, "Conrad, where did you learn your leadership skills?" I said, "The School of Hard Knocks," and that's the truth, because you can learn. This guy's an MBA in leadership, and he goes, "You can learn what you can learn, but there's only so much you can learn out of a book versus what you can learn through life." So being open to those conversations, wanting to be around those people, the proximity. So what I had down here, Justin, proximity and accountability.
Hang around kids. Kids are the most honest
Yeah, for sure.
little dudes in the world,
100%.
man. Kids will tell you
100%.
straight up, like anything.
And that's one thing I said to him. He's this guy I met with yesterday morning. He's got 2 young girls, 4 and 6. And I said, "Mate, be an observer. Sit there and allow them to teach you." I said, because that's the blessing in life. And he's actually dialed his life back to allow himself to spend some more time with his children, because he was a very, very high level of executive, taking some time out and doing some odd projects here and there. And my daughter's 19 years of age, so I probably did a lot of learning over the last 19 years. A lot of growing up too, and a lot of harsh realities that get shoved in your face because you don't have a choice when you have to provide for a child.
Yeah, and kids and the elderly, actually, at each end of life, elderly get to a stage where
you get to parent your parents, right? So that's what I'm doing now with my mum, apart from putting nappies on her.
No, I think it's from my experience recently, like the last couple of years, I've struggled with, say, accountability. And what does that mean? And particularly in the business, I don't have a boss to report to. You have to be self-disciplined when you're the sole owner and founder. So a recent thing was that I implemented a board, which has helped me be more accountable to the actions. They keep me honest with myself of looking at what I should be looking at and challenge me. So I think, you have to be essentially willing to, I think that's the important part, is acknowledge that you want to change or something needs to adjust. Of course, my phone just went off.
Your phone should be on silent, gentlemen.
That's the board. That's the board
Yeah.
checking up.
That's the board checking up. They overheard me. So look, I think
But you had to be in a situation where you wanted to receive the information too. Right?
Correct. Like I talked about it for a long time. I talked about doing this for a long time, and then I got slapped in the face and was like, okay, yeah, now I should actually do it and
take action.
Take action.
Stop being
and it's been one
delusional.
of the best things that I wanted. Yeah, exactly.
That's a big trust play as well. You have to have trust in that board that they're going to be telling you the truth and the honesty. And
Yeah,
stuff
and
like
keep
that as well.
keep you accountable. So accountability, I think, is huge as well. But you've also got to know where you're going, and you've got to be honest with yourself first before you do that. Because why do you want a board? Like, are you growing the business? Do you just want to have a partner and just produce great work?
Just want to say I've got a board.
Yeah. Do you
Just get a
or
whiteboard.
just exactly? Do I want to do it for ego? Like,
Yeah.
and
Just
these
call
are
it
the
by its last
questions you
name.
have to sit with. And I think there are so many areas in life we could do that around our health, our finances, our relationships. If you look at all of these sectors, and I think, identifying where it's not working, and I think it has to start with good old Jocko Willink as well. Ultimate, responsibility,
Extreme
accountability, which is ultimate responsibility of
Extreme
yourself.
ownership.
Extreme ownership. We got there in the end between the three of us.
Well, fucking Jocko let us down here.
Yeah,
Stepped right in.
Jeez. Because if you start blaming, you're not going to get anywhere. You can't be honest with yourself if you blame and there's excuses. You have to take complete responsibility for everything. Be the student.
110%.
110%.
I don't agree with that though.
Mathematically impossible.
Get feedback from others. Put yourself
What would the
around
science
other
say?
people. If everyone around you is agreeing with you and is just like patting you on the back, it'll be you got the wrong people. I think around you as well.
But no matter what you got, this is why I did that quote by Vaynerchuk. Do you want to go through that? Or do you want me to say it?
I was going to finish off with that.
Well,
Or you can finish off with that if you want.
Actually, can I quickly get in just with a quick quote from Mark Twain, who
I
says,
like Mark Twain.
"If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything."
True.
I like that. So, because the complexity of lies just build and build and build.
Which is why that story, The Invention of Lying, is such a funny movie to watch. Just this quote, because this resonated with me, and it probably ties up what you're talking about fairly succinctly, right? You just have to make the choice to actually do it. I'm so tired of excuses. Why not try something new? Be optimistic, exhibit patience, shut your mouth, and execute. Gary Vaynerchuk from Crushing It.
Yeah, it's as simple as that. I mean, there was a video that I shared in prep for this. He's got a small video along with all of his others. You can Google, Gary Vee being honest with yourself. I think it's legit, the title. And he shares how he just looked in the mirror when he was 30 after all this time and said, you know what? Your actions do not represent someone who wants to buy $1 billion company. And from that moment onwards is when he quit his gig with his old man, went out and invested in these companies and built, this huge ass company. And it was just looking at himself in the mirror. David Goggins is huge at this, but I do think it's much easier said than done, facing the dark. And it's a process and it takes time. Be patient with yourself. I think the other thing is don't be too hard on yourself either if things aren't working out. It's like anything we talk about, it's a practice. One of the best things I like about this podcast is that we talk about the same themes, but it's practice. It's just like anything, going to the gym. You need to keep doing it, consistency, and there'll be moments where you will be delusional. I'm sure I'm going to be delusional again in the near future. I probably am right now.
At the next level.
Yep.
Well, that's the thing. You also don't know what you don't know. And so, I love that Twain quote. It's like your truth will change as you're continuing to grow and learn, because what you thought was the truth was your truth at the time, but maybe you've got other information, so you learn and grow, and that's a big part of it. So you can't you can't just beat yourself up over it, because if you're continually in a growth pattern, then you're going to look at it with a different lens.
But take the time, after this, write a letter to your younger self. That'll reveal some truths that you're not being honest with, and literally take some time, reflect, look back at some lessons, and be open to listen to other people's feedback if you really want to grow. If you want to be a better version of yourself tomorrow, well, you need to be honest with yourself today. That's it. Peace.
See ya.
Nice drop.
Bye.
Oh, yes, not too bad. Anna Perano. No.
Thanks, Simon.
And Ben,
Thanks, Simon.
the winemaker.
And Ciao.